session prepared for you, so let's just lay back and enjoy. Personally, for the online attendees, no worries. We have a technical support for you, Nikki and Glenn, who will make sure that you see and hear us very well. And you can also ask questions through the chat function that we will present to the speakers at the end of this session during the Q&A. Now, speaking of speakers, we have a tremendous lineup of very talented people who will enlighten us about policy recommendations and about how to, and the possible implications when implementing automated vehicles. And we will start with a panel discussion with the people you see here. We have Merel van Zevenand, Project and Policy Manager from Autodelen.net, the network for car sharing in Belgium. We have Anne van Deurze, who is Project Coordinator from the City of Mechelen, Mechelen represent. And Arne Stoffels, also Project and Policy Manager from Impact, an NGO that works on a more efficient and sustainable transport system. They will share the most important insights and conclusions of their discussion paper they have been working on, and Merel is showing it already, together with experts from Belgium and the Netherlands. The speakers from the plenary session also presented it shortly to the secretaries. And this paper is also available here in Dutch and English, so at the end of the session you can take one copy for yourself. And for the online attendees, my colleague will, right now I think, send a link to the website of Art Forum for the Dutch version and a link to the website of Autodelen.net for the Dutch version of the discussion paper. After that, we will go a bit further than only Belgium and the discussion paper, and we have some international guests too, from Denmark, more specifically the University of Aalborg. We have Ditte Bendix-Lang and Ida Bruun-Hoogaert, who will present their research paper on the potential implication of AVs in urban mobility. And finally, like I said before, we will end with a Q&A. So if you have questions for the online attendees, let us know through the chat function, and also for the attendees here. So before we start talking with experts, let's start with hearing out the general public through a video that Autodelen.net created in the context of City of Mechelen, together with City of Mechelen, sorry, about in the context of the project Conquer the Space, where they ask people's opinion about automated vehicles.
De auto's zijn er ook veel plaatsen vrij.
Ja.
Wat zou u graag zien op die plaatsen?
Ja, ik ben wel geneigd naar het idee van volkstuintjes. Dat je zo zelf je eigen tuintje kunt hebben voor je... en dat je niet een half uur moet rijden buiten de stad voor een eigen tuintje te hebben.
Misschien meer plaatsen voor gehandicapte mensen of zo?
Misschien fietspaden of zo. Zo'n klein mini stadspeeltuintje op de plaats van een parkeerplaats of zo, dat is misschien ook wel een leuk idee.
En stel dat u zo in een zelfrijdende auto zou zitten, wat zou u daarin doen?
Plaats van lezen, denk ik.
Lezen? En
Ik denk
u?
naar buiten kijken. Want als ik in een auto lees, dan word ik niet enthousiast.
Onze smartphone zitten kijken.
Smartphone. Series kijken? Praten, denk ik.
We zitten met twee in de auto. Ja, praten.
Kijken jullie uit naar een toekomst met zelfrijdende auto's?
Ja.
Dat is helemaal akkoord.
Ja.
Zie je dat zitten? Ja. Daar gaan we naartoe. Als die techniek voldoende uitgereikt is.
Ja, maar ik ben eigenlijk een autofreak en ik heb graag nog zelf het stuur in handen.
Ik ben daar niet positief over, zelfrijdende auto's. Ik ben meer voorstander van meer te voet gaan.
Wat zou voor jullie de ideale traject zijn?
Geen mee naar de stad of zo, want soms komen daar echt weinig bussen en zo.
Ja. Echt centrum. Echt
Ja.
in het centrum.
Een luchthaven of zoiets. Of een ikkerhandel.
En zeker gewoon werkverkeer. Ja.
It's quite interesting to see that the general public is quite excited about the upswing of automated vehicles, but we hear that they are not yet very ready to let go the steering wheel. And despite the fact that fully autonomous vehicles are still something for the far future, automated vehicles are actually already existing and already there in our current transport system. Let's start with Merel. All of the speakers of this session, also our speakers from Denmark, are a partner of the ART Forum project, where ART stands for Automated Road Transport and not Autonomous Road Transport. Now, I think it's a bit obvious what the difference is, but can you shortly tell us what the difference is and mainly why it's so important to make the difference between those two?
I don't know if it works. Yeah, that's a very good question for starters, Essen. Well, the difference between you mentioned a little bit, but an autonomous vehicle is a vehicle that can drive fully autonomous, so no human interaction is needed to have that car driving. While automated vehicles have technology incorporated that assists the driver, but a driver is still needed. While autonomous vehicles may sound a little science fiction for most of you, the automated cars really drive our roads today already, and it's interesting to see there is a range between a conventional vehicle and an autonomous vehicle, and in between we have all levels of automation. And it's interesting, we don't have to wait until the technology is fully implemented, until we have fully autonomous vehicles for having the advantages that the automated vehicles can bring us. So we can start implementing these advantages today.
And is this also what you're trying to do with the Art Forum project? Is it all about like creating awareness only on the technology or something else too?
Yes, the main goal is actually to create awareness among public stakeholders. Autonomous technology and automated technology has a lot of potential to create more efficient cities with less vehicles and more environmental friendly vehicles. And they have also potential to support inclusive transport, but there are also risks when automated and autonomous transport is implemented in a wrong way. We have risks of, for instance, more traffic and cyber security issues. So what we want to do with the project is to create awareness for that and to make local and regional authorities aware of the fact that we have to implement it in the right way, and that's also why we made up this document with a lot of policy recommendations. It's also handed to the minister this morning, but where we tell them how they can implement it in a good way so that we can have the potential advantages and not the harmful effects of automated transport. And by doing so, we want to support sustainable transport and inclusive communities.
So it's actually about creating some kind of a holistic vision or perspective on the possible impacts of automated transport that you are trying to create with the Art Forum project, and hopefully making authorities ready for this technology. And speaking of readiness, KPMG launches on a yearly basis a report called the Autonomous Vehicles Readiness Index, where they rank several countries based on their readiness for this new technology. And I think it was last year that Belgium was also considered for the ranking for the first time. And of the 30 countries, Belgium was ranked 21st. While, and this is very interesting, the Netherlands, or neighbors, were ranked second. Now, Arne, why do you think Belgium was ranked so low? And maybe most importantly, how come the big difference between the Netherlands and Belgium?
let's say first, the good news is that it's the first time that Belgium is included, so that already shows some kind of boom or willingness to embrace autonomous vehicles here in Belgium. But indeed, it is still ranked very low on the KPMG report. One of the first things that KPMG states is that Belgium does not fully embrace the technological innovation. Like in the Netherlands, there is more implementation, experimentation with smart traffic lights, which in Belgium is not fully developed. And those are the technologies and the infrastructures we need for autonomous vehicles. Mm-hmm. So that's a step back, or not enough focus is put on that. And also, more in general, the infrastructure in Belgium seems to be at a lower level. KPMG says that we are at the bottom 5 of mm-hmm. road quality. So that doesn't help either.
But despite these challenges, Belgium has been testing automated shuttles since 2018.
Yeah, correct.
So there's hope. Yeah.
There is hope. We have to say that those tests are small scale in a very protected small area. So we could say it's a bit of an artificial area. So the results cannot be translated to urban mixed traffic, for example. But yes, there is some hope. Regarding the other aspects that KPMG states is that the technology used for those tests often comes from the Netherlands or France, so our knowledge is not yet entirely there to develop it by ourselves. And lastly, as you may know, Belgium is a country, but it's also different countries at once, so different political levels have to work together to take fast steps, which is not always the case. So that's another threshold mm-hmm. for autonomous vehicles in Belgium.
And Merel was already talking about the awareness with the regional and local authorities. Now, Belgium being ready for this technology is one thing, but these technologies will be implemented in cities and townships. And we have someone from the city of Mechelen sitting here with us. And we know that this concept of automated or autonomous vehicles is quite high on the agenda with you guys, with City of Mechelen. Why is that? Where do you see the potential or the added value for your city?
Yes, indeed. From the early beginning, we as a city, we want to be involved in learning about these new technologies, because in the end, it's our citizens that will benefit from it. And by being engaged, our knowledge will also grow about these new technologies, and we will be better prepared for the future. So that's the reason why Mechelen as a city wants to be an early adopter concerning autonomous pilots also. And we think in these early stages it's very important that IT developers are working close together with cities and also with experts from different domains, because the technology need to serve a mobility need in the end. And by piloting together with cities for a real mobility purpose, then we are going to make sure that the technology is really developed for the needs that we have or that our citizens have in the end.
Mm-hmm. And this is also one of the reasons why you as Art Forum partners started the process of the discussion paper, to not only focus on the technological things, but also the social and economic possible impact of these vehicles. And you focused on 3 main subjects on which autonomous vehicles should or could have an impact: socio-economic level, public space, and rural area. Now, Arne, let's start with you. Automated vehicles are often communicated as more accessible and inclusive transport options. But according to the experts that you spoke for this discussion paper, what are the conditions for these vehicles to be considered as inclusive or accessible?
Yes, indeed. In this paper, we have tried to zoom out what could be the role of autonomous and automated vehicles in the future. And to make them inclusive, it's very important that they are seen as complementary to already existing sustainable modes of transport. It seems like a very logical thing to say, but it's very important to keep that in mind. So, for instance, reducing public transport for more autonomous vehicles is not a way to go. As mentioned earlier, the backbone of our mobility system should be public transport, and the same applies for active mobility. Also, should be at the front of our thoughts. It's the know and stop principle, the STOP, which is stappen, trappen, openbaar vervoer, privéverplaatsingen. Walking, biking, public transport, and then private car use. So that's very important, and yeah, we think that autonomous vehicles can fill existing gaps, and also mentioned earlier, be shared. It's a very crucial part of sustainable and inclusive deployment of automated and autonomous vehicles. So all those things together can lower prices, can make it more accessible, and can also provide a more livable public space.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about accessibility, we can also consider the regions that are already not that accessible, mostly known as rural areas. Merel, what were the expectations or according to the experts, about the possible applications of autonomous transport in those areas?
Yes, we saw two solutions actually. First, there is a solution in first and last mile solutions, combined with the public transport. In this way, the less accessible rural areas become more accessible. And secondly, there is a solution from the past, actually reinvent the past with public transport, tram lines, for instance, that are autonomous and that connect smaller towns and municipalities. So, the public transport gets more economic feasible than it's now in less accessible regions.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you talk about public transport, because De Lijn, the Flemish public transport provider, decided to put its autonomous pilots projects in 4 Flemish cities on hold because the technology is not yet mature for the trajectories they chose. Now, Anne, what can we do in the meantime if we put those projects on hold? Should we wait until the technology can handle a fully autonomous level 5, or what should we do?
No, definitely not. Waiting and doing nothing is really not an option. There is a lot of work to be done in different domains to push the advent of autonomous vehicles in the right direction. So it would be good to test both automated functions and also meaningful use of autonomous technology in different domains, also in different settings, in different places, with different groups of end users, and also for different mobility purposes. So it's very important that the provided innovation budgets are being used meaningfully in this regard. So our whole region will benefit from all these new pilots. And therefore it's very important that different stakeholders will closely work together to achieve this goal.
Mm-hmm. If you can slightly focus on the technological part, there is also a technology that is quite essential for the autonomous transport. It's called ISA. It stands for Intelligent Speed Assistance. It's often linked to autonomous transport, but it is a technology on its own and it can be already used. It's here already, but it's not fully or sufficiently used yet. Where do you see the added value of this technology regarding maybe with autonomous transport or maybe without?
Mm-hmm. So new European regulation is making safety features in cars mandatory from next year on, May 2022. So that's already really soon. As such, Europe is pushing the car manufacturers to invest in better safety automation. So intelligent speed assistance, so that drivers from new cars will be warned automatically when they are speeding, is one of these mandatory features. So the ambitions of Europe are quite high. By 2050, they want to have 0 fatal road accidents. And that's a good thing to strive for, especially also for Flanders, because in the ranking of European countries, our country does not perform very well concerning car accidents and car injuries. Also this year, for instance, in 2021, we had like the highest number of car injuries since 2016. So really in Flanders we are densely populated, we have a lot of people living close together, so we also have a lot of cars. So this is really something we have to work around. And we really think that these automated features can help us with this. Mm-hmm. So if technology, of course there's an added value, if we can save lives and we can prevent injuries by testing these new technologies, so that's worth it. Because like around 95% of the road accidents are actually the result of human actions. So driving too fast, or driving under influence, or driving when tired. So this can all be solved with these new features, with these new safety features. Mm-hmm. And of course, some people are a bit scared about this, but remember, like in the 70s, when the new seat belts in the cars were being made mandatory, there was also a big fuss about this. So if we can save lives and if we can save injuries, I think it's worth trying. And mm-hmm. Flanders has there a lot of work to do.
And of course, it's not all about the technology, as mentioned also during the plenary session by the minister, and also in your discussion paper. The first policy recommendation in your discussion paper ends with the sentence, "Automation without sharing makes little sense." Now, Merel, why does the paper put so much emphasis on sharing of future cars?
Yes, as said, autonomous and automated vehicles have the potential to create a lot of positive effects, but also negative effects are possible. For instance, it can be possible that driving a car would become much more attractive because of the lesser time loss you experience. So there are risks for increased traffic jams and stuff like that. And to prevent this, it's very, very important that we think how we want to implement this autonomous and automated vehicles. And therefore, it's interesting to really support the sharing of autonomous and automated vehicles, and also really implement it in public transport. This should be the two main goals of autonomous transport. The public transport and the sharing of vehicles. And that's what we recommend as well. Start today and start to, as the minister indeed said, integrate shared mobility in residential areas, or adapt local parking policies to in favor of shared mobility. We can start with this today. And in this way, we can ensure that autonomous transport can be implemented in a good way.
From what I hear from all what you say, and also what I read in your discussion paper, it all starts with regulation. I feel like we often talk about the government taking over the steering wheel, no puns intended here. But we know that the government should take over the steering wheel. But Arne, what are the risks if the government doesn't take over the steering wheel and we leave it as it is?
Yeah, if we look at the rise of the private car in the second half of the 20th century, it seems clear that the government should take charge in this evolution of autonomous vehicles. The risk of not doing that is that we create a technology in a market-driven sector that potentially doesn't give priority to societal needs, and that should always be the goal of an inclusive mobility system. So yeah, it's really the goal of the experts' advice that the government takes the lead, takes the non-existent steering wheel, and makes autonomous vehicles fit within the framework of sustainable and inclusive mobility. That's that's really, really important.
It's obvious that there's a huge task for the government to plan the mobility of the future while keeping an eye on the current mobility challenges and the already existing solutions, whether technological or not. Merel, Arne, thank you so much for sharing the most important conclusions of your discussion paper.